Okay, so we're here in lesson 17, begin. I want to just caution, not really caution, just want to let you know that I did make some changes. I went back and in order to not get those super short hairs, I still got a few short ones up on top. What I did is inside of XGen, I basically went back to the file prior to the last lesson, and before I did the same steps we did in the last lesson, inside of modifiers, I took my cut modifier down to a randomness of 0 to zero point 0.3 instead of 0 to zero point 0.8, and that gave me slightly longer hairs. I'll go ahead and put this back once everything's done to what it was before, so I do have the actual short hairs created, but that way the animation wires are at least a little bit longer. Okay. Now you guys are also probably going to notice that something else has changed. If you take a look here, I have viewport 2.0 shut off. And I've actually also taken the shader here on this model, and I made it a slightly lighter color, excuse me, so that it just shows up a little better. Now the reason I've turned off viewport 2.0 is for some reason, and I don't have an explanation for this, if I have XGen and I'm playing back Nucleus hair inside of viewport 2.0, Maya locks up and sometimes even crashes on me. I'm sure this is a fairly minor bug that'll hopefully be fixed soon, but just kind of keep that in mind. I think it's something fairly recent. I've done this before in 2015, so hopefully, again, it'll just be fixed soon. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a play blast of what we have right now, kind of just default when it comes to the movement of the hair. Now you notice I changed the background color too, just so the hair shows up a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and play blast, and we'll be back in just a moment. So here's what we have, and it's kind of hilarious. The hair's flying everywhere. It's digging in through him. It's stretching to crazy proportions. So we have a lot of things we need to change here. Now again, this is not meant to be a tutorial on using NHair. Again, if you're interested in all the options, there are tutorials out there to help you with that. I'm just going to kind of go through here and just troubleshoot this kind of fur look specifically. So I'm going to start by, let's close off collisions here, inside of my hair system. Under dynamic properties, first of all, I'm going to up my stretch resistance really high, pretty much to full there. You can take it higher if you want to. You can actually type in the number manually. You'll notice down here you have this no stretch option. Again, this is another weird bug. If XGen is active and I turn this on, I will lock up Maya. So I'm just taking this stretch resistance up to full. I'm also going to give it a bit of compression resistance and even some bend resistance, just to kind of stiffen it up a little bit. But to really get some of that stiffness going, I'm going to come over here to the start curve attract. That's going to help these hairs try to always match the position they were in at the beginning. I'll probably take this up to maybe, let's say, 0.5. And let's do a play blast and see what we have. Zoom out here a bit, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, and here's what we have. It looks better, but it's still not great. The hairs are moving way too much. They're extremely sensitive. They're just kind of flopping around at the slightest movement. They are digging into his body as well. Now I could address that pretty easily. I could just turn his body into a collision object. I'm going to hold off on doing that for just a little bit because it is going to slow down my interaction quite a bit. I'm going to try to slow down these hairs before I do that first. So back to my hair system over here. And I think what I'd like to do is first of all change the attraction scale. Right now it's showing that at the back end here at the root we have full attraction, and then it kind of slides off quite a bit. I'm going to bring this up and actually even give it a kind of a fall off right there. There we go. So that'll make the hairs a little stiffer. I may take the start curve attract higher as well. I'm going to try about 0.8. So keep in mind that's not ridiculously high. That means it's only 0.8 up over here near the root. It still is going to be less towards the tip of the hair. And I think what I'll also do is come down here to forces. I'm going to make the hair a little heavier. I'm going to try a mass of 2. And to kind of also slow things down a bit, make them less sensitive to movement, I'm going to give them a damping of 0.5. That might be a lot. We'll see, but I kind of want to have a look at it first. Maybe it'll be fine. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and play blast, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I think it's significantly improved. The hair isn't moving too much anymore. It still is. It's not that it's totally stiff, but it's not jumping around like crazy. So I think I'm relatively happy with this. I will go ahead and create his body as a collision object just in case. I don't want, like, if his arms touch or between his armpits over here, I don't want the hair to unnecessarily kind of interpenetrate. So to do that, it's fairly simple. I'm just going to rewind here, select the body, and I'm just going to come up to my effects tab over here, and we'll go to, end cloth, and create a passive collider. Okay, let me see if there are any other changes I want to make to the hair system. I think I'm relatively happy with it. If anything, it might be a tiny bit too stiff now, but I think I'm going to err on the side of a little too stiff, and if it all works well later on, I can always come back here and maybe drop this start curve attract a little bit. I think overall I'm probably fine. Maybe I drop my damping a tiny bit to 0.45. Okay, so just to make sure everything works, and what I'm also going to do is try to up the quality of the simulation a little bit. I'm going to jump to my nucleus here. I'm going to drop down to my solver attributes, and I'm just going to raise these to about 8 and 12. So just a little bit more calculation time for it there. Now, I didn't go through and properly set up this hair. I didn't set up my space scale and things like that. Again, those are things you can learn how to set up in more traditional training for end hair. This is just so we have something to drive our fur. So I'm going to go ahead and do one last play blast. Okay, so here's our result. It looks pretty good. It's not perfect, again, as we mentioned, but it should do for right now. We can always go back and make changes later. I could see they're actually maybe a little too stiff in areas, so maybe a little more damping was actually not the worst idea, but we'll see how this works. We'll see how it attaches to the fur, and again, more changes can be made later. So to attach this to our fur is actually relatively straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and open up our XGen window. We're going to go over to our modifiers and go to the animation wires. So to attach this, we need to use the attach hair system over here. So I'm going to go ahead and select my hair system, and I'm going to click attach hair. Oops, no curves selected. Sorry, in my head I was selecting the curve system. Let me go ahead and grab those curves. So I'll go ahead and grab my output curves here, attach hair system, and we'll give that just a moment. Okay, it's been attached. So what we need to remember to do next, and really I should have remembered to do this a little bit earlier, is if you recall, we start our animation at -30. That's the frame that our wires were created. So I'm just going to jump up here, and I'm going to set my reference wireframe to -30, just to make sure that it's well aware of where that reference frame is. Okay, so we can do a quick test now to see if this is working. So it's not going to look awesome just yet. Let's go ahead and play this forward a few frames. So I'm going to pause while I do that because it is playing forward a little bit on the slow side because of the collisions now. Okay, so I've played forward to roughly frame -1. So there's been some movement on this part. You can see some of these hairs have flipped up a bit. So to see if this is actually working, we of course can preview the fur. So if you recall, we are in our regular viewport, so it's not going to look as awesome. And it might be hard to tell, is it working or not? The test is to shut off the animation wires. And I'm going to go ahead and preview again. And you can see that there is, in fact, a difference there. Something is moving, something is changing. So it's not moving a whole lot, but it definitely is moving. So we will have to make some adjustments. Most likely, those are going to come from adjusting the magnitude scale over here, which is kind of set to 0.5 at default. We can also add masking to it if we want to stop motion in certain areas. And as you can see here, we actually can also increase the overall magnitude right over to here. Maybe I put this at something like 0.5. I'm going to go ahead and re-preview. You can see I've had a slight change. So I can start controlling over here too. I can tell it that perhaps the magnitude is stronger at the tip. So I'll bring that tip up a little bit higher. And re-preview, and you can see the tips of the hair have begun kind of moving up a bit. And I can actually set it so maybe the roots don't really move at all. So you can see again, they just move very, very slightly. So it's just going to be a matter of coming in here and playing. I can go ahead and maybe increase this a little bit more. There we go, so a little bit more movement. So what I'm going to do now is take a really quick play blast with the fur attached on. That means it has to refresh it at every frame. So this will take just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, I didn't go ahead and actually finish out the whole play blast. It was obviously going a little bit slow, but we kind of got the gist of it here. You can see that the hair is clearly moving along with those end hairs. So I'm going to go ahead and end the lesson here. Now, in between lessons, just so we can get a better look at this, I am going to play blast this, hopefully in Viewport 2.0. I've had better luck once the hair is pretty much done and finished. And I'm probably going to cache it out. I'll explain how I do that in the next lesson. But I'll go ahead and try to create a nice higher res play blast in between, again, hopefully in Viewport 2.0, so we can get a better idea of how this hair is moving. So I'll see you guys in the next lesson.